It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 412. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Hello.
Kodra.
Hi.
And Tam.
We are all together.
We are. We're still down a world traveler Thalen, and we're down a Grace. So this is unfortunately becoming a semi-weekly topic. The corporate collapse speedrun.
If there wasn't incredibly stupid stuff happening
Every week.
Not even every week, it's every day. Every day, it's some new stupid thing. It's incredible.
Belle, you're gonna have to be more clear. Whose speedrun are we talking about here?
About metas or Twitters? Because they're both.
Or FTX.
Oh God, yeah.
Also DeviantArt.
DeviantArt, yep.
Also
DeviantArt is trying to follow in the Muskrat's illustrious steps.
I'm really fascinated that Musk managed to implement a feature that erased $1 billion of Eli Lilly's market cap.
that is the most amazing thing that came out of this is someone created a fake verified account for Eli Lilly and said they were going to give away insulin. Well, that's what they make all their money from.
So there were other things going on, to be fair, that probably resulted in that. But you know whose stock did go down for, as far as I can tell, no reason other than Twitter? Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, Lockheed Martin.
So it's not like, maybe that specific example isn't accurate, but it's not that far off.
There were so many examples of various accounts that sprung up, you know, Mario flipping everybody the bird.
Uh-huh.
I really enjoyed the fake Tesla account that said they were sending thousands of Tesla cars because they were the best explosive device on the road.
Well, and I think the whole muskening happened between now and last week, where all of the celebrities that were verified turned themselves into Elon Musk and got banned, or had that already happened?
We knew that was happening last week because
that
they were all I am Spartacusing.
That having been said, the winner of that one has gotta be Doja.
I don't know what Doja Cat did.
Doja Cat posts, "Help me, I don't want to be Christmas forever. Please help." Gets a personal response from Musk saying, "Sure, you should be able to change your name now." She immediately changes her profile picture and name to Elon Musk and says, "Thank you." Just unparalleled. Like, as sad as I am about the whole thing, and I am, because as discussed last week, like, I do get some value out of Twitter.
Yes.
I also find this hilarious.
I feel like I can put a better answer on what I get out of Twitter though now, which is I get the ability to I will discover a thing that I can become passionate about that I had no idea before from Twitter. But the fact that the way that places like Mastodon and Reddit and all of these others are trying to silo you into special interests areas means you mostly don't get that.
It's been such a weird ride. And every time I log in over there, it's more dead.
Twitter?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, all of my feeds are just dwindling in numbers of people.
I have legitimately caught up more than once, and that's weird.
I really do think we're getting to the point where it's just a matter of time. There's been a mass sell-off on Twitter stock where various institutions are taking 30 cents on the dollar.
Oh, you mean the things that were being used to bankroll the refinance? Yeah.
So the thing that I find really interesting is the places that people are going are not the social media sites you'd think, other than maybe Tumblr.
Yeah, Tumblr actually seems like a decent answer.
Tumblr is definitely Tumblr definitely shares a bunch of things with Twitter in that it's like got an impenetrable user experience, and in order to engage with it, you really have to know its memes. But like, I haven't heard even one person suggest going to like Facebook.
Oh, nobody's going to go to Facebook.
Or
well, okay. The problem with Instagram is it is impossible to have conversations on Instagram.
I follow a couple of like old establishment Republican never Trumpers, and some of them have said they're going to Facebook.
Of course they are.
Which, yeah, like, of course they are. Like, that's, if there was anyone going to Facebook, it would be them.
Fair.
It's been weird. Mastodon has kind of become the de facto thing that like people are quote unquote ditching Twitter for, but like also I don't know that a lot of people are going to stick around. Like there's definitely a group that will stick. I am there now. I mean that is now my new Twitter. I'm barely popping over to Twitter at all anymore. Which is a huge change because like I was terminally online on Twitter. But like I don't think they'll be a mass that I think there's going to be a lot of people that just don't stick around.
I think there's going to be a bunch of people who just stop using social media because that was like Twitter was the social media they did, and they're just like, all right, well, I guess I'm done with that now. And I kind of suspect that it's going to result in more like, I just don't even need to interface with social media at all anymore.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is kind of the end of the social internet, or if it goes back to being way more niche.
Because I suspect, and like I don't have the data to back this up, but I suspect that a lot of people had a like social media browsing habit that crossed multiple different places, and so once like one of them goes, then the whole experience is sort of more limited, and eventually you get to a point where it's like, I just don't browse anymore. It used to be fun, and now it's not.
Hey, like right now, Mastodon feels a lot like Twitter, or not Twitter, but IRC used to feel like, where it was like a super niche thing that like the people that are there are excited to be there, but like there's still a lot of people that don't functionally get it. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of this.
Yeah, I don't know. Mastodon still seems like a few too many hoops, and also like there's some technical issues with it that make it very confusing, like me trying to understand exactly how any of the stuff works there.
See, I'm surprised. Like it would seem like you would grasp it like immediately. I don't know.
So what I think the thing is like I was starting to like trying to find tags that people were in, and I did eventually find them, and they were not the ones that were getting recommended to me, and none of the tags had it, like hashtags had any, like the metrics were all off. So like search seems
that's
Mastodon.
That's screwed. Like, because I don't know if the counts on hashtags aren't federating correctly. But like, no, they're notoriously wrong. So you kind of just have to like click through to find out, is there traffic here or not?
So how do you find out what are the trafficked hashtags? Like discovery was a huge important thing for Twitter. Does that exist for Mastodon?
Not really. No. Like, and I think it's purposeful. Like, which is you can say is a bad thing or you can say is a good thing. Like the entire reason why they only allow for searching by hashtags is basically to keep people from getting brigaded when they search a term and find a post from 3 years ago and then attack based on that. If you're just making a comment, like a random statement, it's not going to like trickle up through the search engine. The hashtags, the best source that I have found is a community resource called Trunk, and it reminds me of Yahoo before Yahoo was a search engine, where there's just a bunch of hashtags and people can voluntarily sign up to be accounts that they're okay with people following them for that hashtag. So like I am on there as gaming and video games and some other stuff. So like that's what I'm going to talk about. So like if you want to follow me, you can find me. But also that list of hashtags kind of covers the gamut and is pretty much the ones you're going to find most frequently. But again, you're never going to find that through the client. Like trunk is a thing that you have to know it exists in order to find it. I mean, I like that you can follow a hashtag as though it were a user. And then once you've built your own follows, you can unfollow that hashtag. I also spend a lot of time looking at local and a lot of time looking at federated and just seeing random stuff. But again, like I think your point, the lack of discovery is going to make it a very obtuse network for a lot of people. But also I don't know that there's any other services that are going to do a better job. I got into Pillow Fort and I don't get Pillow Fort, so that's a thing. They opened the doors this week to like non-paying members. So if you want an invite to Pillow Fort, I can get you an invite to Pillow Fort, but I don't know that
What is Pillow Fort?
Somebody recreating Tumblr.
I was going to say a Tumblr replacement is what it was.
Yeah. It and co-host are basically just Tumblr by another name. Counter.social feels like it is a place nobody should be. Like they went the way of Parler and Truth.social and like just took the Mastodon client and then unfederated it and are pretending that it's not Mastodon anymore. But what's so jacked about that is like I can be on a Mastodon server and I can say follow at username at counter.social and I can see them. I could put a follow request through, but it'll never go through to the user on that network because they have basically AOL'd themselves off where they've created a walled garden out of freely usable resources. So yeah, like I do not get good vibes from that network. I mean, some people dig it, but it's like it's touting the free speech lines, which never ends in good things. Because free speech no longer means what it used to mean.
It means I'm mad about consequences.
Yes, exactly. I want to spout things off and never have consequences. Anyway, I have a feeling that we will at least have a brief topic every week from now on because it just keeps getting worse.
Yeah, until it stops getting worse. And like
we're not even close to stemming the bleeding yet.
Well, I mean, I feel like the over under on at what point do you just 404 when you go to twitter.com?
Next week is the World Cup.
It might be next week.
Well, so here's the thing. Like this is a thing that I saw mentioned and then I turned around and mentioned it over on Mastodon. But like, you might want to go to your Twitter account and look at all the applications that are connected to it and make sure you have ways to get into those things without a Twitter authentication. Also, you may want to just go ahead and start disabling all the connections that you had from Twitter and other things. Because I fully feel that there will be a time when none of that just works. Like, it's just gone. Also, if you requested your data dump, you might want to look up the Python project that will convert that into a true offline backup. Because apparently, as it stands, it's just referencing back Twitter servers to view all of your data. So like somebody wrote a Python script that'll go through and basically convert everything over to Jekyll files that, copies down all of the images and everything so that it's a truly offline backup. So basically, like, now is the time to start putting contingencies in place. If you lost Twitter tomorrow, that you wouldn't be screwed.
I'm not sure what I would care about for my Twitter feed.
I had two things that were only connected to Twitter. For whatever reason, when I signed up for Fallen London, it was connected only through Twitter and medium.com, which I don't know that I care about medium.com, but I went ahead and moved it anyway.
Oh, I'm more referring to my Twitter data.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I wouldn't think I would want anything, but like, 5 years from now, maybe there'll be like if only I could remember what happened at such and such, I would feel better situation. And like, meh, it was like a gig and a half of data.
I'm sure mine would be under a few megabytes.
Probably.
The only thing that I feel like I would find value in would be like the what's it called? The short fiction stuff that I did. But that wasn't even on my main account. I'm not even convinced I care about that. I haven't looked at it in years.
I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's anything worth keeping, but might as well grab it while you can. Because at some point I feel like there's going to be a point where there's no getting any of it.
I was going to say, but you're an IT professional?
Yeah, like I know it's just going to go away. Like it's just going to go away. The number of times I thought I didn't need a backup but took one anyway, those have saved my butt many times. So like I'm just going to archive this along with all the other crap that I have archived. We all know that I do stupid things for no good reason. I have gone down this rabbit hole of trying to document various camps, to use the EverQuest verbiage, of places in the world where you can go to get a named level 590 weapon for every possible slot. And why that matters is if you get a named weapon, it basically just ignores expertise.
What's
so
expertise?
Expertise is the watermark system. So once you hit 60, you will incrementally start getting better items. And every time you get a new drop for a slot, your expertise will go up for that slot. So you start off with 500 drops at 600, and then occasionally you'll get a bump up, and then your new cap will be 501, and then it's an annoying system. But these named drops that exist in the world basically bypass that. So what happens when you equip items that are higher than your expertise is that it waters down the effectiveness of the item. So if you equip a level 600 item, but you only have 500 expertise, it will basically split the difference and give you a 550 item effectively. Like it'll stay a 600 item, but like it will downgrade its stats so that it's only a 550 item.
Does that make it worse than if you just had a item appropriate for your level?
No, it's the same. Like it's still beneficial for you to go ahead and just buy the cheapest, highest level item you can find on the auction house. But, and your expertise will bump up over time. But what's nice about named items is named items are a double-edged sword because one, they just are that level. And anything 590 or above can eventually be upgraded all the way to 625, which is the maximum level of an item. There's a system to do it, and that's nonsense, so we're not going to get into that right now. But there is a way. Like, you could take a 590 item all the way up. But what's cool about named items is they just are 590. Like, so doesn't matter if you only have 500 expertise. If you're a fresh 60 and you throw on a 590 item, it's just a 590 item. The negative is it doesn't give you any watermark as though you found a 590 item. It's just this item that has an ephemeral level that like is better than what you should be able to equip. So I have been going around the world and finding all the places where you can farm up these items, and some of them are nonsense. Like I got a 590 hatchet off a level 16 bear, and it took forever to get it, but it dropped. And I've been releasing like a series of guides to like, here's a camp, here's how you get to it, here's the items that will drop. This is what I got. This is how long I farmed. Your mileage may vary. And as a result, I have been going around the world and finding these screwball little camps, documenting the drops, making sure that I saw all of the items that could drop.
This is going to replace your Star Wars level by area by level as you boast in your blog.
It probably will be. Like I'm releasing them individually, and at some point I will probably do like a big post that links through all of them. But yeah, like I've done 3 guides so far. I have 4 more in the bank that I've documented, and I'm working on another one now. But basically, in the end, I will be able to tell you, hey, you want a rapier, go here and farm one. And this one will last you forever. So yeah, like it's madness, but also it gives me deep nostalgia for the way that we used to farm things in EverQuest, where you would just go sit in a zone for days on end trying to farm the item.
Remind me, did you play FF11?
I did not play FF11, but I've heard it's the same. Like it came from EverQuest.
Can I take a moment to express my deep and abiding horror that you're nostalgic for that?
I loved it. And it's not for the reason why you think.
I honestly, if you asked me to come up with a reason, I would have difficulty.
So here's what I love about it, okay? These camps are places where people pool, like random people pool because they're after a thing. And we've talked about this before to where so often in a quote unquote social game, the action is too fast that people can't talk. But like over the course of the last week, I have had more random conversations with people just sitting out farming for items. And it's been delightful. Like, you know, we've had conversations about music. We've had conversations about movies, just shooting the shit while waiting on a thing to drop. And it's like, it reminds me of the way things used to be. Like you just sit around in a zone, pulling at a pretty languid pace, having a conversation while it went. And it's been great. Like there will come an end to it, but like, it's just been delightful. And this kind of fades into the second topic is, I mean, I've mostly played on role-playing servers, and it has instilled a certain haughtiness in me that I probably need to do away with. Is I have long believed that if somebody has a garbage fire name, that they're probably a garbage fire human. And that's not the case. Like I have been shocked at how genuinely nice some of these people that have awful names have been. Like I hung out with a healer the other day named Ebola is Bay. That is not a person I would have ever conversed with previously. It was a pretty decent human being.
Just incredibly stupid name.
Like, yeah, like I have long judged people on their naming choices, and maybe I should not do that.
I mean, I'm still going to judge them on their naming choices, but maybe I won't not talk to them.
Right. Like I purposefully avoided people because like, if you had a horrible name, like, yeah, no, that was a moral decision to me that you chose a horrible name. But
there are limits.
Some people just have dumb ideas, and like, I feel less bad traditionally about people when it was like an Xbox Live account or it was a PSN account, because who knows what age they chose that name and now they're stuck living with it for the rest of their life. But like a character in an MMO, like you chose that name like a year ago. Not much time has passed. Like you still should have, you know, been a solid adult when you made that choice. But yeah, like it's just like coming from role-playing servers, like I have judged people on their names heavily.
I think that I'm sort of the other direction, and I miss the existence of role-playing servers.
Yeah.
I miss the existence of role-playing servers. I had no interest in ever role-playing, but I liked them.
I mean, it was only a little bit the role-playing. It was also like there's you have a broadly different kind of person.
Yep.
Who gravitates towards that sort of thing. And unofficial role-playing servers just don't do it.
Right. Yeah, because generally speaking, you had a more PvE focused, but also more community focused group that wanted to roll on a role-playing server.
Yeah.
And I think it's a testament to the fact that like most of our big raids weren't guilds. They were non-guild based groups which was just not a thing that happened on other servers other than role-playing servers.
There was no conceptual reason to be anything other than like there wasn't a guild. Once you were, there wasn't like a community that wasn't your guild.
Yeah, like once it was like, why are you joining a guild? On the other servers, it was to raid.
Right.
And that's sort of a thing that you see it. I see it in mobile games too, like mobile game guilds and just modern guilds in general. They're very transactional.
Yes.
Like join, you'll see guilds that are either like just desperately trying to get their body count up, or if they're large enough to have a critical mass, they're like, okay, well, if you want to join us, here are the requirements.
You have to do X things, X days in order to keep your membership, or
right.
Yeah, whereas for me, like, guilds have always just basically been a friendly chat group.
Yeah,
like first, that's the beginning of it, is a friendly chat group. And then sometimes things happen out of that.
Yeah.
But also, I'm perfectly fine with us just all hanging out and chatting, doing different things.
And I think that's the MMO experience that I miss.
Yeah, the hyper social.
I don't know, like, New World chat has been hyper social of late. Like, there's been lots of random conversations that happened in New World chat lately.
Oh yeah, no.
We've got a lot of talkers.
I don't mean like general chat. I mean like I'm gonna join this group as a social experience, and it's not just like, oh, and there are many groups that exist as social experiences.
I also wonder if this isn't a little bit of we're a little bit old for that now.
I miss the existence of chat channels. And I guess link shells were kind of that in Final Fantasy XIV, but like link shells had a limit to them and people didn't seem to use them as just like chat groups. But like I know in WoW, I always had basically the maximum number of chat channels I could be in at any given time. And they were all associated with different things. Like, I know there was like a chat channel of a bunch of, guild leaders on the server. And then there were, different breakout groups from different raids. And, people had role-playing channels that they were in. But like that piece of MMOs doesn't seem to be considered important anymore.
What cracks me up is it felt barely supported at the time.
Yeah, but it was infinitely better than anything that's come since, which is sad.
Like there was the create and join channel was a wholly undocumented feature of WoW.
Right. I remember, like, I think I had guides on my blog about how to do all of those things because, like, nobody knew how to do them.
Or how to maintain the channel.
Exactly.
Like, moderate the channel. Oh, man, that was some
because it just
wizardry. It
gave it to whoever happened to be on. Like, if there was ever a scenario when, like, whoever the last person on got control. So, like, you couldn't really actually moderate channels unless you were just going to, like, leave an account logged in 24/7. Because the second that somebody idled out, it would just give the ops to whoever was the last person online. And yes, I used IRC lingo, but I don't like.
So often there's something that makes me wonder about age ranges. Like talked to a contractor who mentioned that an option comparable to a Geo Metro, a car that does not exist anymore.
No, but I had a friend from college that drove one well into the mid 2000s. I mean, the older reference would have been a Yugo.
I'm not sure he was old enough for that. I certainly am. I certainly am not.
Yeah, it was a very short-lived car company from Yugoslavia. So one of the topics that ended up getting skipped last week was a Battletech topic. So, Tam, do you want to tee this one off?
Oh, yeah. So I've been kind of down this Stompy Mechs kick lately. And so we played a decent amount of Mechwarrior 5, which is pretty fun. Just get in some mechs, stomp around, blow stuff up. It's great. And I think we've talked about on the show that, like, The base experience is okay. Okay to iffy because it's more buggy than you feel like it ought to be for how simple it is. But it is very heavily modded by the community. And Harebrained Schemes Battletech, the strategy game, similarly is actually very good baseline, but also has a lot of heavy modding from the community. And I found this really interesting until I found this really interesting and kind of weird that the baseline games got so aggressively heavily modded, considering that they're kind of niche. Like the level of modding that goes into some of these games and like the production values are a lot higher than you might expect. Like people releasing all of the clan mechs, including, 3D files. Like I downloaded a mod for Mechwarrior 5 that was like a 4 gigabyte mod.
Seems excessive.
Which, right. I was like, that seems really excessive. And then it's like, oh no, this has the models and texturing for like 40 new mechs. And playing around and just sort of like following the community of the tabletop miniatures game, I suddenly understand. Because I had avoided Battletech for a long time because it has this reputation as being legendarily obtuse. Like legendarily obtuse, legendarily slow to play.
To be clear, it didn't get these reputations for no reason.
And it's true. It definitely has these reputations for a reason. But when I started reading through the rule book, I was like, this isn't that complicated. Baseline. It's just that you take this very, very simple, pretty straightforward system and layer 40 years worth of rule books on it, because the core game system hasn't changed significantly in that time. So everything is cross-compatible. And like, yeah, okay, now you've got something incredibly unwieldy. But it's interesting. It's interesting to see it. It was kind of like I downloaded a pretty significant Battletech, like Steam Battletech mod that added a bunch of mechs and changed some of the calculations and expanded the career mode in a bunch of ways. And honestly, I think I might turn it off because I'm not super enjoying it. Because it really slows things down. It's cool in some ways. It's like it adds a bunch of new stuff and it's got all these interesting options, and you can start all of these different ways that makes things interesting, and it does a bunch of work to make light mechs continue to be valuable in a way that they really just aren't in the video games.
Some exceptions apply.
Yeah, but like outside of very specific cases, the video games are like, oh, you've got a bigger mech, you should just bring your bigger mech. The bigger mechs are just better.
That's pretty true.
And in the tabletop game, that's not even close to true. And this mod goes to a bunch of trouble to change that and say, no, actually, they are like mechs of different sizes are very valuable. But I wish more mods added things that were cool without also adding difficulty. Because the other thing that it does is it says everything you fight from the jump is fully repaired, has full armor, and is completely ready and fully equipped, which the base game does not do, which means that you can have like 10-minute battles as you're getting your feet under you that aren't these long these knockdown drag out fights, because you might be going in fully armed and armored and you're fighting stuff that's got like 10% of its usual armor because you don't have a build yet. And this just eschews that entirely. It's like, oh, you might get wrecked. It's more roguelike. I'm like, no, it's the opposite of the experience I'm looking for. I want variety. I want variety without it being like, also, check it out, we made it Souls-like hard. But it is interesting.
I do find that frustrating, though, that so often with mods, like the really interesting ones that they're doing something, also just want to go deep dive into difficulty.
Yeah. No, it's I find it super frustrating because there's so many interesting things that you can do that aren't that. Like, they don't have to be that.
Yeah, it's like the content is being designed for people who are already done.
Well, people who are already done and whose next step is, I want to do this but harder.
Yeah.
Versus I want to do this again but different. Which I feel like, like a Hollow Knight randomizer, for example, the core concept of a randomizer is a significant jump in difficulty over the base game. But once you get past that initial difficulty hump, from what I've seen, different randomizers aren't like dramatically more difficult. I mean, some are, but it's not really. You're doing the randomizer is like trying to get you to do in other different interesting things within the randomizer space.
It's mostly trying to get you to mix up your path through the game.
Yeah, versus
which may be easier. It might not be.
Right. Yeah, it's just interesting. It's just a different. It's just you're doing the thing but different this time, and that keeps it fresh.
It absolutely has the option for making it harder.
Right, which I also think is great. Like, do you want to have the Battletech game where you roll in and you've got about a 45% chance of your people just dying in the first mission? Like, I don't, but there are people who do. They're like, the same people who are like, I want to roll up 5 characters for my D&D game because I want to feel like my character's not dying is like a huge success.
Yeah.
Character death should be the norm. And like, it's not the way I want to run or play games, but I understand that that's a thing that some people want. But I think it's good as an option.
The only game I want to run that way is the Bloodlords game, in which it is intentionally part of the game that people are supposed to die and then be brought back via necromancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paranoia was the same way, where it gave you duplicate characters because you were going to die a lot.
I mean, yeah, Paranoia starts with a 6-pack because that's what kind of game that is.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, that's perfectly fine. And you know what you're getting into from the jump.
But like, Paranoia is fun, not because it's like a hard-ass game. It's fun because it's like this parody of a game.
Yeah, Necromunda is similar. Like, you can try to optimize Necromunda, and you'll kind of just ruin the experience for yourself. Mostly, you just want to try to make crazy stuff happen all the time, and it's real good for that. But the other piece of this for me is I picked up because I found it on sale and I didn't have the most recent DLC. Steam was like, "Oh hey, Mechwarrior 5 has this new DLC," and I said, "Oh yeah, cool." And then remembered that I don't actually have it on Steam, but it was on sale, so I rectified that. Mostly because it turns out that a lot of the modding community moved from Epic to Steam.
Turns out Steam Workshop means something.
Yeah, Steam Workshop has value, and honestly, I was able to get the last time, one of the reasons that we sort of petered out on Mechwarrior 5 previously is because the mods that we really liked all broke with one of the expansions, and then we just sort of dropped it. And there are more and better mods on Steam Workshop now that it's launched on Steam. Still haven't fixed multiplayer jump jets, but everything else.
That kind of cracks me up, honestly.
One of the developers has apparently weighed in on that, and it's tragic.
It's weird that that's the case, though, because like so often the mods that are available through Steam Workshop lag behind the mods that are available through like Nexus mods or something like that. It's interesting that this community is different.
Yeah. Also, just stomping mechs is fun.
Stomping mechs is very fun.
Like, and it works surprisingly great on the Steam Deck.
Now, are the mods cross-compatible for Epic or no at this point?
So I'm pretty sure the entire game is cross-compatible. Like, you can play... The host has the mods for the game that you're playing, as far as I can tell, I think. But like, you can play across any platforms that the game is on. But that being said, I haven't actually tried it, so I have no idea. Part of me thinks that it would be difficult for the mods to not be cross-compatible, but I've been surprised at the difficulty of things that shouldn't be difficult in the past.
So, Kodra is officially famous in the Sudoku community.
It's true. I managed to get one of my puzzles featured on Cracking the Cryptic that I made a long time ago. When I had decided that I had seen a lot of math-focused Sudoku puzzles, like between killer cages and some stuff like I'd seen some multiplication, some exponents. I hadn't seen anyone mess with bases, and I thought that was a really fun idea. Like, what happens if all of the numbers I'm giving you are in bases that you have to figure out as part of the puzzle? And that idea stuck with me for several months, and then I got talking to some setters and trying to figure out like what's the process of going through and setting a Sudoku puzzle. And it's kind of interesting. Like the method I used was sort of just like working backwards, like, all right, let's set a constraint, then let's try and solve for that constraint. What does that limit me down to? Okay, well, I still have some duplication, so let's set another constraint, see what that does, and then keep setting down constraints until like basically you get to a whole bunch of deadly patterns, and then you resolve those one by one, and then that's what I used to submit the puzzle. I was fairly happy with how it turned out. If you want to check it out, it's the basic maths on the cracking the cryptic YouTube channel.
I mean, I watched the entire thing the other day because I had it playing in the background. It was largely incomprehensible to me, but like, I thought it was cool that like you went to a lot of work to create that puzzle.
It was surprisingly a lot easier than I thought it would be. Like, because it's one of those things where I'd seen all of these hand set puzzles, and like I was like, oh, that's definitely like way too complicated for me to figure out. But then it was just like once I started, you know, with a blank grid and started like, okay, what's an interesting idea for this constraint? The first idea I had was I wanted to have a 9-cell cage, which means it has to have every digit from 1 to 9 in it, which if you know your triangular numbers, or as Cracking the Cryptic says, the secret adds up to 45, and then put a number that wasn't 45 on that cage, so that they would have to like be able to work backwards and figure out, oh, well, I know in base 10 this adds up to 45. I can figure out what base this must be in for this number to be accurate. It's actually it was very satisfying. I put 7 digits in there that were basically, if you just thought about the cages, would be given numbers straight away. And before he managed to like do the solver worked at the puzzle, and then about 11 minutes into the solve managed to find the last hidden given, and it was a very, very satisfying moment for me to watch. But did not manage to solve any of the puzzle with Sudoku until he found all 7 hidden givens, which was kind of the goal.
So did you use some sort of a template creator to like actually generate the puzzle itself?
So there's a bunch of different utilities. There's F-puzzle, which one of the earlier members of Cracking the Cryptic community built as a like setting solution. There's also I actually initially set it in a fork of Pinpa, pin.pa, which is a old like usually used for setting like Japanese logic puzzles, but people used it for Sudoku as well. And the fork had a whole bunch of like very nice. My problem was trying to figure out a way to like format the puzzle so that it made sense, and find a utility that would allow me to put nonsense like 111 as the value of a cage, or 1F as the value of a cage. And yeah, right. And so I used Pinpa, and I sent the it was actually Swaroop, which is another member of the Sudoku community, who had forked Pinpa so that you could do these tools. And I sent that copy in along with my November Solve solution. So every month, patrons of Cracking the Cryptic get a like Sudoku puzzle hunt. And so when I solved that, I was like, well, if you're interested, here's a puzzle I set. And they decided to feature it. It was very exciting. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, that was really cool.
It was. It was a very. I'm getting back. I guess I'm getting back into Sudoku and like doing a lot of these things, and it's been very fun and very satisfying. And if you're interested, the Cryptic has a free app on Steam with some free packs that they've released, and then some DLC that you can get. And one of the DLCs is the gas or generally approachable Sudoku. And those are all Sudoku designed to be solved by anyone with a passing interest into Sudoku, or designed to be speed solved by people who are a little bit on the higher end. I highly recommend them. This is based off of a cracking the cryptic joke where there are actually two people who solve this. So in my case, I got this solved by Mark, and Mark would frequently send Simon puzzles and tell them that he thought they were generally approachable, and frequently they were not. Frequently they were some of the most like you have to like do all of this geometry hacks to try and like uncover one digit, and then everything falls apart from there, but it takes like an hour just to put one digit into the box. But yeah, Sudoku is fun, and very excited to see something set on that channel. Makes me want to set more Sudoku, and maybe I will start doing that.
That's really neat.
Tactics Ogre Reborn.
So, yesterday, Square Enix released a remake of Tactics Ogre. It's the second time they have done this, but now it's actually playable on things people own. The last time was 2010, where they released it on the PSP. It is a much more comprehensive mechanical overhaul of that game than I anticipated. Like, battles mostly work the same, but they reworked the skill system so that you have 4 equipable skills. You can only use those 4. And so, like, you have some passives, you have some automatically triggered skills, you have some actives that take those same slots. They reworked how equipment works a little bit. They reworked how character levels work quite a bit, because class levels are no longer a thing. And they introduced union levels, which is sort of like your team level, which prevents you from grinding past that point. Not the easiest game in the world, so that's not a change that makes it easier. But also it means it's a change that removes grinding as an option, so you have to sort of actually play tactically. Still pretty early in it so far. I did the complete nonsense battle against Nibith and managed to not lose anyone, unlike the PSP when I tried this. But this is a fun game. And if you want to see the game that inspired Final Fantasy Tactics, this is an excellent way to play it.
This was the game that was on the PlayStation 1, right?
I think it released on the PS1 here. It released originally on the SNES.
Okay. Like, I remember playing Ogre Battle on the SNES, but I thought Tactics Ogre was on PlayStation 1.
I'm relatively certain that if you were in the US, that is true.
Okay.
I do think it released originally on the SNES in Japan. Yeah, it did.
Okay.
I remember Tactics Ogre when I was a kid and being like, why does it have such a weird name?
The thing I'm actually kind of sad about is that they ditched the subtitle, which was a Queen reference. The original subtitle was Let Us Cling Together, and the PSP release kept it.
Star Citizen IAE.
It's that time again. Once a year, they have once a year, Star Citizen does its annual kind of, hey, new players and existing players, try everything. They put it's done as like a in world. It's done as like a car expo, or just like, one of those showroom floor things. But they do it with spaceships, and so it's like they do a 2-week free fly where you can play for free and try out basically any ship in the game for free as a free rental. I started playing the game about this time last year, just before it kicked off, after having sort of dabbled in and out of it. And it's been a cool year of watching development and new things come in and changes occur. And this is kind of the last big event before what is looking to be a pretty big year. They basically took a lot of this year off to not release smaller patches because they're working on a few really big pieces. One of them is persistent entities. So basically all of the objects, when you put them somewhere, they stay there through logout, even if they're owned by you, which also unlocks things like cargo hauling and a bunch of other weird little pieces. Things like, oh, your salvage is in. So like if a ship is broken, like a ship is destroyed, it leaves a wreck and you can go and salvage that wreck. Coming soon is their thing where they say that most of the time, unless you have like a critical component that gets hit, and even then sometimes not, when your ship is quote unquote destroyed, as in reduced to 0 HP, it will become disabled rather than actually destroyed, which opens the ability for you to repair it or crash land on a planet or a bunch of other sort of potentially interesting emergent things. And then they want to add, from what I've heard, they want to add a second system, which hasn't happened yet, which will be very interesting to see. The other thing that they're working on is the revamped new player experience, because boy, does the game need it. Boy, howdy, does the game need it.
Good. Maybe at some point, once that happens, I'll actually give it a shot, since
Yeah.
I did buy into the game.
It is a very compelling tech demo now. I think that I'm very interested in the sort of upcoming year's worth of patches, because so much of it is them. There's been a lot of foundational tech that's gone in over this year that like doesn't look very exciting on as a baseline. You're like, oh, okay, they made a river, cool. But like they made a river using procedural tech, which is also used for other things like roads. And now suddenly you have the ability to have a whole network of transit around a planet. They put in a limited sort of a limited demo, a limited like proof of concept of planetary nav mesh, because previously NPCs could only path in sectioned off bunkers basically that had nav mesh, and now they have areas where NPCs can path around in the planetary overworld, which unlocks a lot of crazy things. You know, get your Star Wars speeder bike chases kind of deal. And so it's been neat seeing all of this foundational stuff go in, and you know, barring some kind of disaster, which of course there might be, this next year should be pretty big. It's going to be very interesting to follow. There's been a sea change this past year that I've noticed, as there are more and more people talking about playing the game versus talking about the game exclusively to mock it. Like more people who are in the game and playing it are talking about it versus people who are like, hey, let's, you know, Star Citizen made X amount of money, like look at all of these suckers. And I sort of the big influx of new players time, and so that's going to be very interesting to see. There's also a ton of rumors flying around, as there always are around this time of year, about what new things are they going to release, usually ships, and who are they for. I haven't heard any exploration ships, so not really paying too close attention. But they do have a Drake, what looks like the rumor is a Drake starter ship. I know at least one person who wants that incredibly low-tech duct tape and welding aesthetic. But yeah, I'm looking forward to checking it out. The other big thing that's coming in this patch that I'm personally the most interested in are races. So they've basically taken a bunch of community race courses and then some new race courses that they've designed and built them out and have like racing missions with time trials and various other things to make actually racing around in the game world versus just like in the sectioned off modes, which seems super fun. They also added Mario Kart. You can drive. They teased this. Apparently somebody's like pet project was making a racetrack for ground vehicles, and so they have a little like racetrack for wheeled stuff, which should be coming this patch. I'm pretty excited about seeing that. I really enjoy racing in that game. It has a very high speed F-Zero feeling without the like F-Zero track. It's all 3D. And it's fun. I don't know, it's fun. There aren't a lot of flying games that really give you that flying racing feeling. And I love the variety in things you can do as they slowly build that up.
I did watch the thing on Daymar Rally, and that seems neat.
Oh yeah, the Daymar Rally is really fun. So Daymar is one of the moons in the game. It is a kind of deserty Badlands kind of moon, and the Daymar Rally is a very long distance like marathon race. And it's neat because rather than a race that's like go as fast as you can, it's like an endurance match, and you've got to hit a bunch of checkpoints and get to the goal. But you have a crew. You can have a crew with you. Your crew has like a support ship that can fly around like helping you out. You can have your support ship can have backup vehicles in case your vehicle gets too damaged to keep on going or gets destroyed. I think they allow backup racers in case something incredibly untoward happens to you. And it's really interesting seeing people's like, okay, I'm gonna pick what kind of vehicle I want to drive here, and they have different like classes of things, and then people's like support ships, and then how do you navigate? There's this really interesting thing because it's like when you're on the ground, you can't see the cliff coming up, so you've got your eyes in the sky trying to keep you appraised of the terrain and also help you navigate to your next waypoint. So it's this really neat team effort. It makes me think of like the solar car races in the Southwest, or like similar kinds of big team rally events where people are all doing different jobs. Very community driven.
I still keep trying to place in my head what this game is going to look like when it's finished.
It's going to look weird.
Because like right now, it feels from you talking about it like just a lot of tech demo elements that sort of work together, but not quite. But I'm really curious to see what all of the linkages eventually add up to.
Yeah. There's even in just the past year, I've gotten to see more of these things kind of becoming coherent. And I find it really cool to watch. But also what I think is neat is it's really hard to get a grip on what does this look like when it's quote unquote done. And honestly, I think it looks like Warframe. I think it's going to have a very Warframe, hey, I've been playing this game for 5 years and they've just added a completely new earth-shattering feature that is both optional but also can dramatically change the way I approach the game.
Well, for the longest time, listening to anything about Star Citizen has felt like it was a game designed by a 5-year-old, because like it's just all these features all the time that don't necessarily work, but like it doesn't matter because we lost our attention span and have moved on to the next cool feature.
Yeah. And what's been happening recently is a lot of those features that were like stubbed in are coming back to roost and are getting massively upgraded and returned to the everything, to like the game. I think that there's a few pretty significant stumbling blocks that the game still has to figure out.
Why is it still open world PvP?
Yeah, I think that's the big one. And I don't think the game. I think that there are lessons being learned. One of the things that they launched this year was a big first-person shooter area that has a big event space in it, and they're adding missions to it as well. But it was a big event spanning multiple different floating platforms, and it felt like an EverQuest dungeon. If you remember, Belle, if you remember like EverQuest dungeons that were these huge sprawling things and there would be like multiple parties in them all going to different parts and so on and so forth. It was like that. Meets like a Guild Wars 2 zone meta event. And it was really cool, except when people were griefing it. And the griefing was bad. It could be like just absolutely destructive. And it's been interesting to watch them kind of realize this. There's definitely oh wait, this doesn't, you can't just wave your hand and say, oh, open world PvP. What they're going to do about it is yet to be seen, but it definitely sparked some community outrage. The fact that they followed it up with a bunch of PvE, like very heavily PvE events and a bunch of other PvE content, suggests that they also saw some player drop off that they wanted to respond to. I think they still need to figure out how they're going to do it, or go the Fallout 76 Elite Dangerous route and be like, yeah, you can play this on a private server, because it's the same. I mean, it's the same lesson that Fallout 76 learned. Turns out people just prefer to play on private servers sometimes, and I think that would work fine for this game. It would feel kind of empty without other players, but like, once there's enough content, I don't care. Even without the content, other players are not the interesting part of the game.
But I do think that there's a way to build an environment so that you're blending in different people based on the type of activity that's done.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, you can absolutely do it. You need to make the thing that you need to do is you need to think about the PvP situation from the perspective, not from the perspective of people engaging in PvP, but from the perspective of people who don't want to. And I think this is a consistent mistake that that people designing these things tend to overlook, tend to repeatedly make, because they're looking at the real world as a model. And in the real world, broadly speaking, the theory is that you deter crime by having a system of punishments that leads people to say, you know what, actually, I'm not going to do that. Putting aside the realism of that, it's what games try to do, and I think it's fundamentally the wrong thing, because in the real world, those have lasting consequences. I can't just re-roll and have a fresh record. And similarly, if I'm being griefed, I can't just log off and do something else. So like in a game, both of those things are true, and you see it. Like if you've got this open world PvP, you see people that are just like, I'll just log off and do literally anything else. But what I think is, and that's why I'm like, the way you want to do it is to think about it from the perspective of not the person, not the punishment for somebody attacking somebody else, but the person who gets attacked. How do you make their experience better? And in a lot of cases, that should just make places where that can't happen. The what is it? The Dark Zone in
Division
is a good example of this. Like, if you want to play the Division and you don't want to deal with other people, you just don't go to the Dark Zone. Done. And like, yeah, they incentivize you going to the Dark Zone, but it's not like, as far as I'm aware, there's not like there is anything you couldn't get with some effort out of the Dark Zone that you could get in the Dark Zone. It was just easier in the Dark Zone.
Right. Yeah, like it was a shortcut to get good stuff.
Yeah.
If you're willing to take the risk.
Right. And like your risk reward calculation is right there. And some people will be like, you know what? Yeah, I'll give it a shot for the better rewards. And other people would be like, no, I'm never going in there under any circumstances. That's just not the game experience I want, and I don't feel forced to do it. And I think you can do something similar. You just have to go a step further than Eve ever went, because Eve has a cool idea in place where they've got different levels of security, But those high levels, the highest levels of security, you need to have enough of a game in the highest levels of security that you don't ever have to leave them, which is the
Right.
same mistake Archage made. And you need to make it so that you absolutely, under no circumstances, can get griefed by another player in those spaces. Full stop. And once you've solved that, you don't actually need to go in, crazy systems of like incentives and crime and punishment, because you mostly don't need them.
Well, so there's this design pattern that keeps falling into place in games where you can't have the best thing unless you do X. And whatever X is different depending on what game you're playing. Like, it could be raiding, it could be the hardest core PvP, but like, you can only have this best thing if you follow this pre-described route.
Yeah.
And I think that's flawed. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think every play pattern should have the same meaningful reward as a result. Like, you can get the same thing. Your path to get it is totally different. It may take you twice as long to get it if you're going down a more risk-averse route to get it.
Yeah.
But you should still be able to get it. Like,
right, exactly.
And the problem is players are like, well, why do you want raid quality gear if you're not going to raid? Well, that's beside the point. Like, you want to be able to get the highest tier of the thing.
Yeah, it's progression. It's upward. Everybody wants to be, regardless of what kind of part of the game that you're playing, you want a progression path. Even if that looks different for you than somebody else, even if you value something different. And like, one of the things that I've seen is like, okay, so say, for example, they talk about like hauling cargo. And I was like, oh, well, but it's interesting because you need to hire an escort. It's like, well, no, that's boring actually for everybody. But I can see a thing where it's like, okay, you're delivering cargo from point A to point B. You can go through point C, which is an open PvP zone, and that's one hop. Like, you go from point A through point C to point B, and that's the shortest route. Or you can go through like 4 other systems, and they're safe, but it'll take you longer.
Right. You can either take the Kessel Run, or you can go all the way around.
Yeah. And like, that's, not only is that a compelling choice, but it's a compelling choice that I might make differently on different days, depending on how I feel that day. Some days you just want to do the milk run because for unrelated reasons, you're not feeling that hardcore. Sometimes you're feeling spicy. Sometimes it's just not what you want in a game and you want the chill thing. Like, I'll occasionally engage in the PvP side. Not that I've had a lot of experiences doing that, but I've at least, encountered it in a few events. But like, I suspect that Ash and Thalen, if there were this is a PvE only system, would absolutely jump in and give it a shot, at least just to see.
Well, and I think it's also important that games don't paint you into a corner as well, because like so often they're like, oh, okay, well, I'd like to PvP today. Oh, no, you've got raid gear. Like, you can't PvP now. You went down the raid path. Like, you're forever a raider now. But I want a PvP from time to time. Nope. You already made your choice. Like there needs to be some flexibility that games allow you to change your mind without starting from scratch again.
And that's one of the things that I really like about Star Citizen's design as far as gear goes, because gear is really your ship, and ships have a lot of different reasons why you might choose them. And there are long, unceasing, heated arguments about what ship is best for what. And I feel like that's healthy. Like, it's legitimately good that people argue over what the best cargo ship is, or even will be.
Well, it's usually the sign of basically a level playing field.
Mm-hmm. And like, I have this fever dream of, living out my Star Trek fantasies and getting a bunch of friends and rolling around in an exploration ship. but the game needs to be something that other people want to play first. And I think that it's going to have they are clearly learning a lot of hard lessons. And I think that they are going to continue learning a lot of hard lessons, but also there's pretty good evidence that they are learning as they go and making changes accordingly. I mean, just in the year I've been playing, they've added, friendly target pips that show up on your HUD so that you can identify. You don't have to know what outfits the allies versus enemies are wearing. You could see a pip that's like, don't shoot that person, which is a small thing, but it's helpful. But yeah, free fly next week for the curious. It's server stability notwithstanding, because a lot of people jump in and this is the internet. Server stability notwithstanding, it's one of the better times to try playing, just because you can try so many different ships and get a feel for them.
So I kind of want to call an audible here and close out on a very short topic, but we've talked about it a little bit, but if you are not watching Andor, you should be watching Andor.
Oh God, yeah.
Like, this show has been a ride for me because at first I didn't really care about it, and then it started to turn interesting, and now, like, I would consider this maybe the best Star Wars to be presented yet.
Yeah, I think that the really neat thing that was going on with Rogue One was that it was taking Star Wars in a completely different genre, and Andor is doing a similar thing, and it's really cool to see. And it's just Star Wars like I've not seen it before.
Right. And like, the thing is it makes me think that I would be so down with them basically doing a series like this for all of the characters from Rogue One. Just tell us how they got to that point. Like tell us about them. Show off their specific corner of the world. Because like, there's so many interesting things going on here.
Yeah.
And a lot of times in a television series type production, they shy away from grand scale, but like, there are so many elements in this show that just have grand scale to them.
Yeah.
That don't look like they're CGI. Like, they feel textural, and it's almost a very, like, there's a certain aspect to the movie that reminds me of certain scenes from Clockwork Orange in the way that the city flat blocks and stuff looked, and like, it's very 70s-ish design in some of the way that the show is working.
Which is sort of what Star Wars was doing initially for obvious reasons.
Right. It was the 70s version of high tech, and it is really like continuing to run with that. We have 2 more episodes, I think, and like, the last episode was just phenomenal.
It is such a slow start, and it's so worth it.
Well, like, my opinion has kind of evolved like the character of Cassian Andor. Like, there is some growth that happens. So yeah, basically, like, if you are not watching it, you should be watching it. Like, you really should be, because this is kind of groundbreaking stuff, at least as far as Star Wars goes, but I would say as far as sci-fi goes.
It has the problem of, it has the anime problem of, it needs a few episodes.
Yep. Yeah. Give it at least 4 or 5 episodes before you make your decision, because like, that's kind of where I was. Like, at the end of 3 episodes, I could either take or leave it. And I'm glad I stuck in, because like, it has gotten so good. Anyway, any final thoughts about anything? Well, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.